All right, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of things that have been brought up to my attention, and I'm going to break this down from my perspective. So, somebody reached out to me with a question, and I thought this was a very interesting topic, so let's go ahead and go over it. So, the question is strategies that you would suggest to build confidence around people. That's a very broad question. So, the question is strategies that you would suggest to build confidence around people. There's a couple of questions that this person asked. So I'm going to break these down a little bit from the little bit that I know, okay, about this particular. I don't even really know anything about this particular dog. So I'm going to make it a broad, general perspective. So let's go ahead and go over that right now. Build confidence around people. You have to take a couple of things into account. One, are you dealing with a temperament issue? Meaning, is a dog just on its own not comfortable with people? Or B, are you dealing with a dog that has had bad experiences with people? Those are two entirely different things. And sometimes you don't know the answer. I have clients that sometimes bring their dogs to me or prospect clients. And one of the things that they tell me is, oh yeah, when we adopted this dog, it was clear that this dog was abused by men. And so he doesn't like men, so he must have been abused by men. And the thing is, we don't know that. That might be the case. Who knows? It might be. Or maybe the dog just is not fond of men or people in general. And maybe this dog just takes a little bit of time to bond with a particular individual, but if he doesn't know you, he just doesn't care. And the strategy here might be a little bit different. Also, are we talking about a young dog or are we talking about an adult dog? Are we talking about a dog that has a bite history? Are we talking about a dog that is it a senior dog? Senior dogs sometimes develop some sensitivities that they didn't have when they were younger. There's just so many things that could be going into it. But to answer the question, strategies that you would suggest to build confidence around people, I would suggest two things. One, act like it's not even happening. Okay, don't even bring any attention to it. If you have to bring the dog through, and it happens to be that there are people there, you just go right through. You don't stop. You don't coddle the dog. You don't you don't make a big spectacle out of it. Now, if you are able to set up scenarios where people are cooperating and people are helping you out, then yeah, you can definitely do some counter conditioning. You can have your volunteers, which will be the people here that the dog wouldn't be sure about. You can have your volunteers try to give the dog some food from a distance, not by hand, but just tossing food from a distance. That could work. Right? There are other strategies that reward the dog with space. Okay, meaning, look, dog, I understand you don't like people, but when you give a cutoff signal, meaning, you give a sort of an appeasement signal instead of charging or instead of freaking out, maybe you sniff the ground, you get a little bit of distance. But for that, you need people that will cooperate. You don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you just don't have that, right? You can't just be walking with this dog. Maybe you're taking the dog to the vet and there happens to be people and the dog gets freaked out. You're not going to do a training session right then and there, right? These people are not part of your team. You're not going to go, hey, everybody, go ahead and grab a piece of food and do exactly as I tell you. That's not always possible. So sometimes you just have to ignore it and go, we're going through. So this is more of a little bit of flooding type of approach. And it works very well. Flooding can work very well if applied properly. Okay, if you're not familiar with flooding and you kind of have an idea, if you think you have an idea, don't do it on your own without the supervision of somebody who's done it, because it can be very, very a delicate procedure. And if you don't do it well, you could actually make it worse. You could actually sensitize the dog even more, meaning making it worse. But that would be the strategy. Again, it's so broad. If I'm dealing with a puppy, then I would do as much exposure, not quite socialization. And I have an episode on that too, exposure, or a video at least on the difference between exposure and socialization and what it really means. If you go to the YouTube channel, it might even be on one of the podcast episodes. Either or, I talk about exposure and socialization with young dogs. If you have an older dog, then the strategy might be a little bit more on the flooding, a little bit maybe on the counter conditioning side. Counter conditioning, of course, has its own set of challenges, because with counter conditioning, you're also going to have to look at the critical distance or the threshold. Basically, if you're going to go with that approach of we're going to throw some food at the dog, we're going to give them good experiences, we want to make sure that the triggers, aka the people, are outside of the critical distance. Because if they're inside of the critical distance, you're no longer counter conditioning, now you're flooding. Right? And what I mean by the critical distance or the threshold, we're talking about that invisible spot where the dog is aware of the trigger, but not quite in reaction mode. And when you cross that invisible line, then what happens is you now put the dog in reaction mode. And that reaction could be charging, it could be barking, lunging, it could be fleeing. Okay, so whatever the dog chooses to react, right? Whatever strategy the dog chooses to react to this, when the trigger crosses that threshold or enters that critical distance, now you're no longer counter conditioning, now you're flooding. And now you have to switch the strategy here. And if this, critical distance, threshold, flooding, counter conditioning, systematic desensitization, if this is all kind of going a little bit over your head, I cannot stress this enough. If you're not familiar with this, do not attempt to tackle this on your own. If you understand what I'm saying, if you understand the lingo and it's making sense, then you can go ahead and give it a try. But if you're not familiar, be careful, especially if you're dealing with a dog that has a bite history. This could be bad for you. It could be bad for your volunteers. It's not things that you want to gamble with. Right? So you have to look at the dog. Does it have a bite history? Is it a young dog? Was it actually, did it actually have a bad experience with people? Or is it just a temperament trait, meaning this is how the dog is? If it's a temperament trait, congratulations. You're going to be pretty much dealing with this throughout the dog's life. And yes, it will get better if you are consistent with your approach, whatever approach you take. But it's always going to be there beneath the surface. So you just have to be aware of that. So this person also had a little bit of a follow-up question, which is, what appropriate jobs would you suggest a dog for a dog that has a lot of drive but doesn't have a specific job? This is something that I am very passionate about. I strongly believe every dog should have something to do. Okay, something. It should have something, especially when you have a very high maintenance working dog. Just to give you a little bit of an example on that, my dog Rust, he's a dog that's in a lot of videos that I post on YouTube and on my other social media platforms. He's the fawn Malinois, the brown one. And he is just, he's like a crack addict for the ball and for bite work. He loves to work. He has amazing work ethic. And he's just a little bit too crazy for work. And he is recovering from an injury. So he's been without working not only without working, but I've been managing his activity level, even for potty train, even for pottying. Even when he goes potty, he's always been intense. Like, you let him go potty, he's just, it's like he's always on a mission. And when he goes for a walk, it's like he's walking, but he's in a rush. He's got this incredible just need for work. So he's what I would consider a high maintenance working dog. So now that he doesn't have a job, he is going a little stir crazy. Okay, he's not playing with the ball. I'm not even having him run. He's getting a little bit better now, but he still has that occasional limp. He's not ready to go back to work yet. And this is just driving him crazy to the point where he got the wrong idea for a moment with me, where he was like, "Damn it, Will, I gotta do something. I need to get some violence in me." And we had to have a little bit of a come to Jesus meeting about that, and me communicating to him, dude, no, we're not gonna do that. I know you're cooped up, and I know you're pretty crazy that you're not working, but you gotta watch your attitude here. And that's what happens with a lot of dogs, right? Dogs that don't have jobs, your average pet owner that has a strong, powerful dog, and they don't have a job for that dog, they go crazy. It's unbelievable the amount of clients, pet owners that are out there. And I know this because a lot of these people are my clients. Now, they're responsible because they're coming to me, right? If a client comes to you for help, they're doing the responsible thing. So we're not shitting on them. But if you're a dog trainer, you realize that there are a lot of people that have these very powerful dogs that don't have jobs. I have clients that have very powerful freaking dogs. And, these dogs have like bit people, they bit the owner, and they're just very intense. And then when you get the history about the dog, you realize this dog is just being forced to be a pet. Like, you just stay in the house, come out for a walk here and there, and we expect you to be just like a very nice, gentle pet. And this dog is like, no, I was built for work, right? I have, I was built to I was bred to do something very, very strong, right? So when that type of dog doesn't have a job, they become destructive. And if you're a sport person, or if you're a dog trainer and you're involved in sports, it's easy because you go, well, I'm going to do bite work, right? That's sort of what I want to do. Or a lot of dog trainers go, well, I'm going to do agility because I like to do agility. And some dog trainers go, well, I want to do barn hunt. I want to do scent detection. I want to do disc work, etc., 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 right? But when you're a pet owner, sometimes that's a little bit difficult. Your average pet owner doesn't always have access or connections to get in with a club. So what can this person do? What kind of appropriate jobs would be, good for this dog? One of the things that I recommend is have a regular schedule of intense physical exercise. And I don't mean just walking or going for walks or playing in the backyard, but I mean like full on powerful, like sprint, get exhausted, provided that the dog is old enough. You don't want to put a lot of physical strain on a puppy, on a young dog. That's bad for their joints. But, if you have a dog that is more of an adult, now with puppies, you can do certain things. You just don't want to have them jumping, doing high impact stuff. If they're very young, their joints are still forming. But you have a dog that is about a year and a half, you can start incorporating more things there. About a year and a half, 14 months or so, you can start incorporating more, more high impact things. Not too crazy, but you can, right? You can start incorporating a treadmill and have that dog go full sprint. Because the thing with the backyard is, they're not running straight. They're just running, they're stopping, and they're running back, right? If they're playing with the ball, they're chasing the ball, but they stop, and then they play back. And they can get exhausted that way. They can get tired. They can do very well like that. But it's not the same as going for a full run, like a straight line, right? How often do they do that? And if you take your dog for a walk or for a run with you, that dog could go way faster than you. So when the dog is healing or kind of walking in your vicinity as you are running, as you're going for your jog, that dog is really not going at full speed. They're not going at full potential. But when you have a treadmill, when you have a slat mill, that's when you can really have this dog just go full sprint. You could even make it uphill. That's why I love the slat mill that we have, the manual treadmill, which people who don't understand are like hating on constantly. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you have that poor dog." Poor dog, like, bitch, what are you talking about? These dogs are loving it. And yes, when they're learning how to do it, they're a little bit weirded out. But once they learn that they control it and they can go full speed and they can slow down, they can stop, they love it. Right? So that's one thing that I like to at least have done, right? If I have a client, I will recommend that. And obviously they don't always have that. Because telling somebody get a treadmill specifically made for your dog, for dogs, that's an extra expense, although not too much. I mean, there are some nice electric ones made for dogs that are about $400, $500, something like that. So and then you have the manual treadmills, the slat mills. Those are between $2,000 to about $3,000. But that would be one. Another one that I'd recommend, that I suggest, is at least some scent detection. If I have clients and that's something they want to do, I do the scent detection with them, and then that's something that they can proceed and they can continue on at home. Because scent detection, it doesn't get them physically energized like a treadmill or a full sprint would, but it works their brain. And if you don't have, scent detection, if you don't have the treadmill, at the very least, one thing that is super amazing that I'm really into myself is the weighted vest. Okay, the weighted vest, it's basically just a harness, goes on your dog, and you can adjust the amount of weight that you can put on the vest. So then as you put that on, you take the dog for a walk, and now the dog is walking with some weight on it, right? You don't load it with a lot of heavy weight all at once. And also keep in mind, you want to do this. You don't want to do this with a young puppy that is still developing. But when the dog is about 14 months of age, about a year and a half or so, you can start putting that vest, that harness, and then gradually add some weight on it. And then before you know it, the harness becomes the uniform for them to go on their walk. Now you can add weight to it. Now as they're walking, they're actually working. Okay? So if you want to look into that, look at the link in my bio, or go to xdog.com and make sure you use promo code DTIMP15. So DTIMP and the number 15. So you can get 15% off of your purchase. But anyway, so those are things that you can do to give the dog some sort of a job. Okay, because them just sitting, it's not enough. Okay. Now if you don't have any of that, if you cannot go to the Xdog website, if you cannot get that $400 treadmill, if you can't do any of those things, at least something. If your dog doesn't go for walks, take that dog for a walk. If you don't have a yard, take that dog for a walk. Do something. Have that dog do something. Okay? So another question that came up from this same person is tips on getting two dominant intact males to live together and be cordial. Right? And somewhere along the same lines, tips on introducing new female pup to the household with male dogs. All right, so this is kind of a two-part question, but it's really the same question, right? Getting two dominant and intact males that live together to be cordial. And I can tell you this from experience because I have very bullheaded and very powerful, determined dogs. Jax, my 14-year-old Catahoula mix, don't be fooled by the age 14. He's still in very good shape. And when he was younger, when he was like 8, 7, he was still in his prime. Right, when he was even like 8 and 9, he was still in his prime. So I've had him and I've had Rust, and Rust he can definitely be a very intense dog with other dogs. We have other dogs that are very, very intense. My wife has her 2 dogs, and they're very intense, right? And we have intact males, and they are within the vicinity of each other. And this is something that I also work with through my clients, and I have worked with through previous clients, and that is the following: I don't care if I have 2 very determined, and we'll call it dominant, very, very determined dominant dogs that are males and they're intact, and it just so happens that maybe they don't get along. I don't care, and here's why I don't care. My house, my rules. That's the way you got to look at it. My house, my rules. I have children. They're teenagers, and in general, they get along. At some point in their growth, they could not stand each other. They hated each other for some period of time, and now they're really good friends. But every once in a while, they get in heated arguments. So the rule is always with kids, with teenagers. If you have children, you can relate, hopefully. If you don't, you will eventually relate. And that is, I don't care that you don't like him or her right now. You will behave. Okay? And it's the same thing with the two very, very dominant intact males. And the way I do this is, I've mentioned this in another episode, but the way I do this is I have a contract, so to speak. I have an agreement with every one of my dogs, every single one of them, right? And that is, I let each dog know. I convey this through my actions. I don't talk to them, but I convey through my actions. Fido, right? Whatever your dog's name is, and I do this with my dogs. Look, I will make sure you feel safe and comfortable in this household. I will not let another dog or person harass you or bother you. That's my pledge to you, and I promise you that's the kind of owner I'm going to be. I don't care if the other dog is dominant. I don't care if the other dog is intact. I don't care if he's a bulldozer. I don't care. I will not. My promise to you is I will not let that dog bother you in any way, shape, or form. And I have that agreement with every single dog. Even if I have a dog that I'm training for somebody else, a board and train, same thing. I have this agreement. I will not let any of the dogs here bother you. Okay? That's my first obligation to each dog. The second part of the agreement is this: Fido, I will also not let you bother or harass any other dog. So just like I'm sticking up for Fido, and I'll make sure that he feels safe and comfortable, and the other dogs don't harass him, I'm also going to make sure that I have that same promise to the other dogs. So if Fido and Rex, for instance, right? I'm just making up these names, but this is how it is in my house. This is how it is with our dogs. If Fido and Rex right? There are dogs. We would tell Fido, I will not let Rex bother you. I promise you that. If Rex gets on you, I'm gonna get on him. And I want Fido to feel comfortable in my household. I want him to feel comfortable where he lives. And I'm also gonna go to Rex and I'm gonna tell him, Rex, the same goes to you. I will make sure Fido never bothers you. And if Fido decides to bother you, I will jump on him. Now, I have these two dogs that they go, well, Will's not letting the other dogs bother me or mess with me, but he's also not letting me mess with the other dog. And trust me, once you have that harmony, you can have any kinds of dogs. I don't care what kind of dog it is. You can have any kind of dog. I mean, you can have a very determined dog. Like for instance, with when Jax was younger, he was a very bullheaded. We adopted Jax when he was about 3. So he already had a bunch of bad habits from his previous life. But when we adopted him, he was a bulldozer. He was like, he would see a dog and he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to hump that dog. And very quickly we were like, hell no. No, Jax, we're not doing that. You will not do that, because if I let you hump that dog, that client dog or that other dog that we have, if we let you do that, I'm violating the contract. I'm violating the agreement that I have with that dog. And the agreement that I have with that dog is that I will not let you hump him. So that means I'm going to get on your ass. That means I'm not going to let you do that. And I'm going to be very determined, more determined than you. And if you're a dog that, one of those intact males decides to go, well, fuck you, I'm an intact male, I'm going to do it anyway. That's when you have to have the authority and the confidence to go, no. I think you got the wrong message here. You are a dog. Okay, you're a dog and you're living in this house. We're going to have some rules. And that's the best way to do it. It baffles me. I mean, and I expect it from pet owners, from clients. But it baffles me when I know dog trainers that they just let their dogs, do whatever they want. Right? They let their dogs beat the shit out of each other. They let their dogs, get on top of each other and correct each other. And some dog trainers will go, I just want them to learn how the pack operates. I want them to have their own hierarchy. In my opinion, okay, how I see this, and I can tell you, I've had multiple dogs for a very long time. I've never had to break up a dog fight. Not only have I had personal dogs, multiple dogs for a long time, I've had client dogs within that same group, never had to break up a dog fight. Because the best approach to me, in my opinion, is not to let them figure it out and to let them figure out their hierarchy and them, figure out what is and isn't acceptable within their group. Because what that does is it undermines my presence. It undermines my authority in the group. It's like if you let that happen, again, this is my opinion, right? If you're one of those people like, I just let them, I let them sort it out because they're dogs and they're gonna figure out their own hierarchy. If you let that happen, the dogs are basically going, yeah, fuck you, Steve. We're going to do this ourselves. You just stand there and watch. This doesn't concern you. We're figuring this out amongst ourselves. And Steve's going, oh, yeah, I'm going to let them figure it out. Why? Who pays the bills? You. Who feeds them? You. Who takes them to the vet? You. You do so much for each dog in your household. Why the fuck would you not be the one in charge to tell them, fuck no, we're not doing this. I will break it up. I will not let you mess with that dog. And if you do, there will be a consequence. Trust me, when you do that and the dogs go, oh shit, Steve is in charge. They learn, okay? They definitely learn. They're smart. They go, okay, I'm not going to mess with, with Fido. I'm not going to mess with Rex. I'm not going to mess with Paisley because I know he will, Steve or Will, whoever you are, right, will hold me accountable. That's the best way to do it. Now, let's segue into the next part of the question, which is how do you introduce a new female? I don't care if it's a female, a male, if it's a puppy, an old dog. How I introduce any dog into that quote unquote pack, into that household with multiple dogs. And I don't care what kind of dogs I have, okay? I don't care if they're all males and I'm introducing a female. I don't care if they're all adults and I'm introducing a puppy. Once I have that harmony established that I just talked about a moment ago, when I bring that new dog in, I have the same agreement with that new dog. Whether it's a puppy, female, doesn't matter. I'm going to bring that dog in and I'm going to go, look, new dog, I'm going to sign this agreement. I'm going to have an agreement with you, a contract. And here's how this contract binds me. I will not let these dogs harass you ever. You can feel safe in this household. But also, new dog, I will not let you harass the other dogs because I also have that same agreement with them. That's the way I want to do it, period. I don't want to be the referee. I don't want to be the guy crossing my fingers going, God, I hope my dogs don't get into it. No, fuck no. Okay, if I do that, to me, my opinion is if I do that, I've failed as a dog owner. I have failed my dogs because now they feel like I don't have their back and they have to sort it out themselves. Okay, which if that's your belief, if that's, and I know that there are dog trainers that are of that mindset. I know that there are, that they're like, no, this is the best way to do it. They sort out their own hierarchy. I think, my opinion, again, okay, you can do whatever you want. My opinion is that's bullshit and that's stupid. That means you're not sticking up for your dogs. And here's the funny thing about these people too, these dog trainers, these dog owners that go, I just let them sort it out. These are the people that have the most dog fights that happen because they're quote unquote sorting it out. I've never had to break up a dog fight in my household. I'm not saying it will never happen, but the way I run things, I don't let them harass each other. You can greet, you can sniff, you can be polite, you can interact, you can play. But the moment you start crossing that line and you start making the other dog uncomfortable, I step in. So that's the way to do it. All right, guys, I hope this episode was useful to you guys. If you liked it, please make sure you like, follow, and share the podcast with somebody else. If you feel like this might be useful to somebody else, let them know, share it, and see you guys in the next episode.